Good evening, Speedway. It is 7 p.m. on Wednesday, December 1st, 2021. Welcome to the regularly scheduled hearing of the Town of Speedway Board of Zoning Appeals. My name is Curtis Miller, acting chairman. Tonight in attendance with me, we have on my right, from my right to left, we have board member Janet Fullen, board secretary Sean Harold, board member Steve Jones, and in the audience with us tonight, we have Mr. Eder Lopez, Town Executive Assistant, and Mr. Mitch Rector from the Etica Group. Mr. Lopez, has everybody who wishes to speak been sworn in? Well, if everybody in attendance will please mute your cell phones at this time and rise to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Rules for tonight's hearing. The petitioner, remonstrators, or proponents will each have 15 minutes to present their evidence. After these presentations, there will be a report from Mr. Rector, and after his report, there will be a 5-minute rebuttal period for the petitioner, remonstrators, or proponents. First order of business is approval of the meeting minutes from August 4th, 2021 hearing. Does anybody have a motion?
Make a motion to approve the minutes from that meeting.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved. The next order of business is petition 2021-DVS-006 concerning 2525 Founders Square on-site parking. Will the petitioner or their representative please step forward, give their name, address, and they can begin.
Thank you. Acting Chairperson Miller, members of the board, David King, and it's my name. I'm an urban planner with offices at 6180 East Market Street in Indianapolis. And I'm here before you this evening with Eric Leisner, who is from Civil Site Engineering, and he will also assist in the short presentation that we have for you this evening regarding case 2021 DVS 006, property again located at 2525 Founders Square Drive. We're representing Bobby T. Speedway, LLC, requesting 55 on-site parking spaces. Requesting 55 on-site parking spaces for this commercial use that's under construction. It's a restaurant when the maximum number of parking spaces allowed by Indy rezone is 35. I'm going to give you a little bit of background. As your staff report indicates, or I believe it indicates, that about 6 years ago, and you might have heard this before, the Indy rezone was adopted by the city of Indianapolis, and it significantly altered some of the regulations in the for the zoning for the city of Indianapolis, and also for towns like Lawrence and Speedway and Beech Grove. The staff report gives you a very good explanation of the request. Eric will go into a little bit more of a technical aspect. I want to give you an overview just very shortly, or very briefly. Essentially, what in layman's terms, what that provision, the change in the ordinance in 2016 was to place not only a minimum number of parking spaces for a commercial and industrial facility, but a maximum. And the real reason behind that, for years, there had been complaints that, and I'm sure you've seen it all over Indianapolis and even in Speedway, where you'd have a large shopping center that has they call it a sea of asphalt, or a large area of parking that was rarely used, maybe during the Christmas holiday season, but very rarely used. Even medium-sized retail centers had an abundance of parking in their parking lot that was underutilized. And so for this reason, the city took action in 2016 to not only say that there was a minimum number of spaces, but a maximum number of spaces. And in this instance, for this proposed facility, the maximum is 35 spaces. And we believe there's some compelling reasons why we need the full amount of parking that we would normally have for such a facility, and that is 55 spaces. If you're familiar with the area that's under development there at Founders Square, these are freestanding businesses that are going to be occupying this vacant land. And if you've been down there, you realize that there's no on-street parking, and there's the parking lots for each commercial facility is oriented towards that business. And if people run out of parking for, say, Freddy's, the facility that we're representing this evening, then their only alternative for parking is parking on the street, which again, there is no on-street parking in that area, or parking at competitors. And we think that causes a great deal of difficulty. And therefore, we have made the request to reduce the number of parking spaces, or allow the number of parking spaces to be 55 in number. Again, we feel that the regulation is a valid one in certain situations throughout Indianapolis, but certainly not in an area like this where there is no on-street parking. And also each business is a standalone business that can provide parking and needs the parking for their individual businesses. You can also see in the staff report by our computation that the average of the freestanding commercial businesses that are in that location is 61 parking spaces. So by us asking for the 55 spaces, that is still below the average of the other users in that area. So again, we believe that we have met the findings of fact of the hardship and seek your approval today. I'm going to have Eric come forward and give you a little bit of explanation about stormwater runoff and the way that this site will be developed that may give you additional information.
Thank you, David. I'm Eric Gleisner with Civil Site Group. I am the civil engineer for the project. David did a pretty good job of presenting just about everything I would talk about. I would add that for this restaurant facility, 55 parking spaces may seem like a lot. However, when you consider during their largest shift, they may have up to 10 employees working there. That would take it down to 45 spaces available for customers. And based on their total available seating, that would average out to roughly one parking space for every 2.5 seats, which is a fairly standard metric that the restaurant industry for this type of facility uses. We're just concerned that if we were only allowed 35 spaces, as David said, we just wouldn't have enough parking. We'd have to have the employees park somewhere else, so on and so forth. And I can tell you from experience, I did the engineering for Freddy's in Carmel, and we had substantially more than 55, and they know that that's too much. However, their existing facility in Westfield on 146th Street, they converted that facility from an existing burger joint and converted that into Freddy's, and they have substantially less than 55, and their employees and even some of their customers have to park on the adjacent LA Fitness parking lot and so on and so forth. So we think the 55 will give us more than adequate with a few extras to spare just in case, whereas 35 is we just are extremely worried we're not going to have enough. As far as the stormwater, there were some concerns on the initial staff report about that. I've corresponded with Jason Doan earlier today via email, and I think we've got that all sorted out. The Founders Square development is master planned for stormwater detention as well as stormwater quality, and they actually did a really good job of being extremely conservative. They designed the entire development to be up to 94% impervious surface, and our site is only, with the additional 20 spaces, is still only 72% impervious surface. So we're still well under the allowable area of impervious surface. And we do have a substantial landscape plan with 31 trees and 171 shrubs, which is quite substantial for 1.4 acres. So after Jason and I talked that over, I think we sorted that out, and I believe he's in agreement that his request for green space and whatnot, that we have met those requirements as it is designed currently. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
You said what was this other Freddy's up north? They have more than 55 spaces and they know that's too much. What is the square footage of that?
It's a little bit more. I believe it's 400 or 500 square feet more. It's a different floor plan. these retailers or these restaurateurs are getting more and more efficient. And their kitchens are getting smaller and smaller, so they're having more and more of their area dedicated to customer seating. But they're also realizing, especially with COVID, at some of these places that the real business is in the drive-through. But they still do get a substantial lunch crowd, and that's where the parking comes into account. So in Carmel, they had a slightly larger building, but we had 69 parking spaces there, and we just did that because we had enough room to do that, and they realized that that's way more than they need. Whereas the one on Westfield, they have quite a bit less. I believe they're around 40, 45, and they're overflowing a little bit on occasions.
If this variance isn't granted, how many days a year is it believed this parking would be an issue?
I mean, it would probably be an issue daily during the week, during the lunch crowd. That would be their,
Okay.
I mean, it could be Monday through Friday during lunch. I think it really could potentially be an issue almost every day.
And is that based off of traffic they have at other locations?
Yes, yes.
Anybody else have any questions?
Yeah.
No.
Eric, am I correct in saying that you have 3 handicap spots up front?
That's correct.
That's it? Are you going to put another 1 or 2 if you get your variance granted, or are you still on 3?
3 is all you need up to 75. Once you eclipse 75, I believe you need to add a 4th.
Right, I was just asking if you were. Seems like more and more,
Right.
they need additional ones. So I was just asking if you were considering that, I guess.
Any other questions?
No.
Thank you, gentlemen. Any remonstrators or people to speak in opposition? All right, Mr. Rector?
Hi, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Mitch Rector, representing Jason Doan with Etica Group, who wrote the staff report before you. It's the opinion of Jason Doan that the 20 additional spaces is recommended to alleviate any on-street parking. As noted in the report, the impervious area should not be any cause for concern. If there's any questions, I can relay them back and work through them.
In your report, you talk about approximate parking spots for other establishments. Did you look into square footage or seating capacity at all at those restaurants for this comparison?
I have not.
Okay.
I'm just representing Jason, who's not available to come to this meeting.
Okay.
But I can talk with him about that, and we'll look for an answer to send out.
Any other questions?
No.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, would you have anything you'd like to add?
Only that we would ask that you incorporate our findings of fact as a matter of record to the petition.
Sir, would you mind coming up and reading those findings of fact for the record?
Number one, the grant will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community because the additional on-site parking that is needed is to provide parking for employees and will allow adequate customer parking per the standards of this franchise as identified and operated successfully across the nation. If not granted by variance, the needed parking would spill over to the other nearby users or onto the nearby public streets that are too narrow to provide for on-street parking. Number two, the use or value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner because the petitioner and several neighboring property owners agree that the addition of the needed on-site parking spaces would be in excess of those allowed, would provide relief for other nearby businesses that would experience parking spillover onto nearby privately owned commercial lots, or would create issues for other nearby businesses by finding the needed parkers using contiguous streets that are not wide enough to allow on-street parking. And lastly, the strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will result in practical difficulties in the use of the property because the lack of adequate parking for employees and customers of the subject lot will find customers who wish to gain access to the site would be turned away because the lack of needed parking or parking their autos and other nearby privately owned parking lots or parking on nearby streets that do not allow for on-street parking.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Any motions regarding
I'll
this
make a
matter?
motion.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right. We have a motion and a second to vote on this matter.
Petition number 2021 DVS 006 has been approved by a vote of 4-0.
Is there any other business to come before this board? All right, hearing none. Our next meeting is January 5th, 2022 at 7 p.m. at the Speedway Municipal Center. This meeting is adjourned at 7:18.